Hi, I'll be talking to you mostly. Thank you everyone for being here. We had a much bigger crowd in the morning, and I was surprised it was Sunday morning, but now it's here. I'm not too sure why. But nonetheless, it's still good for us to meet up with people who are not part of our circuit, and we're always happy that we get to showcase our talents, not just here, and also bring you on board. It's a sort of discussion that we can have through debating. Before anything, allow me to introduce MIDP, or the Malaysian Institute for Debate and Public Speaking. I'm not surprised if you have not heard about us before. So we are relatively new. We've been around for 8 years now. We started in 2010. Basically what we do is that we run debate training. So we teach debating, not just in public speaking, not just in the Klang Valley, but also nationwide. We are appointed by the ministry to manage, train and fund the national debating team to attend the World Schools Debating Championship. On top of that, we also run debate tournaments, debate events related. So only recently we concluded the Australasian Inter-Varsity Debating Championship, a competition that's comprised of varsity debaters from Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. It was a big event. It was for 8 days, and we are still very tired from that event. But the things that we've done in the past, we aligned it very much with the 4 key pillars that we have, which are training, events, consultancy, and resources. However, with these 4 pillars that we had, we have not been true, and we have not been fulfilling the true calling of us as a debater and a debating institute, which is to advocate. And the reason, and why should we be advocate? There are 2 reasons. The first is the nature of debaters, and second is with regards to debating as an academic sport. When it comes to the nature of debaters, debaters are very competitive. So the thing about them, and a lot more outside there, the thing about them is that whenever they attend debate tournaments, is that when they win, they'll boast about it. They'll tell everyone that they won the debate tournament or the debate round. But when they lose, they will complain and moan about it. But they don't just stop there. They'll go back home and read up a lot more so that they will never lose that debate again. But the thing about that is that the more they read up, and so that they can win that debate because they are very competitive, is that they learn a lot more, and they become more and more aware of the surroundings and the issues. And also when it comes to debating, that they are able to empathize with plight of people that they don't really associate with. So pretty much because they will be forced into positions like to defend certain things. Let's say you don't necessarily support LGBT, but in that debate in particular, you're supposed to defend LGBT, so that you are able to empathize and you learn a lot more about them. That's the first thing about debaters, and because they are like that, it's good that they advocate. But the other thing is that when it comes to the debate tournaments, is that oftentimes, not oftentimes, every single time there'll always be 2 sides of the coin. So at debate tournaments or in the debate, you always hear people arguing for it and also people defending it. So you get to hear perspectives from 2 different sides, and therefore you're able to find the clincher and eventually come up with a better solution. So this can be applied a lot when it comes to advocacy or when it comes to us making changes. So using debaters as a tool and debating tournament, so we are the perfect group of people to advocate, and having people outside listening to things that we say, that we are able to open up your minds and make you, or change your minds, so that you probably feel differently about certain things. We've had people calling us in the past to perform debate showcases. It's not great because it's very passive. You wait for them to come and invite us, and they will prepare on the platform. The reason behind WOKE is mostly when it started that we decided to change the 4th pillar of MIDP from resources to advocacy, because we believe that we can do it, we believe that we should do it. Hence, we come up with this program, and here we are today, bringing all the strangers to listen to us debate, and bring all the CSOs and the GLs in the government and industry leaders to talk to us and find ways so that we can make changes. Things aren't great in the past. We're about to make it a lot better, and this is where it all started. Thank you very much for being here. This is a big crowd, to be honest. That this auditorium is much bigger. We should have opted for a smaller crowd, a smaller auditorium. But nonetheless, I hope you'll enjoy the debate, and I'm sure we will all enjoy the discussion that we'll have through the forums. There'll be a lot of Q&As, I would think. Other than that, thank you very much. I hope you'll enjoy the show. I'll also be chairing the debate, so I'm just going to go down and grab the wireless mic. Thank you. So can I get the debaters up on stage? can I get everyone down here rather than just sitting scattered in the auditorium? If I could just can I get everyone to sit in the first few rows of the auditorium? Just quick run through of the format of the debate today. There will be POIs. POIs is point of information in which when a debater from whichever side of the house is speaking, then you'll get the opposing side to stand up and ask questions. So it's like an interjection of sort during the debate. So it's for POIs. So there will be POIs. That's first. It's 5 minute speeches per speaker. And the motion is this house supports the commercialization of indigenous culture. Okay, allow me to introduce the speakers today. In government bench, we have Harnavinjit Singh, formerly of Surrey University. Navin was a former debater for the Malaysian World Schools team. He is a quarter-finalist of the Malaysian National Universities and the World Schools of the finalists. Next, we have Deborah Wong, formerly of Mr. Malaya. Deborah is a two-time Asia's top 10 debater and an Australasian ESL champion, a trained linguist from the University of Malaya. She is now a writer at one of Asia's top advertising agency, BBDO Malaysia. Next, we have Madhav Satdev. I call him Dev, never call him by his full name. So I'm sorry if I pronounce it wrong. From Taylor's University, Lakeside campus, so he's a local. Dev is a semi-finalist and top 5 best speaker at the recently concluded Asian Championships, as well as an Australasian Open Octo finalist. He will be completing his final year of reading law at the University of Leeds. That's the government bench. The next bench is opposition. First, we have Jason Lee, incoming student at Stanford University. Jason is an Australasian ESL Grand Finalist and a World Schools Octo finalist. Formerly of Taylor's College, he'll be furthering his studies at Stanford University, where he hopes to come to terms with the Americans' weird usage of the term soccer. Next, we have Rafiq Saladin, formerly of University Technology Mara. Rafiq has won both the Malaysian National Championship and the Asian Debate Championship in 2014. He is an avid lover of Stanley Kubrick films and thinks Kendrick Lamar should run for president. And he also is supporting England at the World Cup and wants you all to know that this year football is coming home. Last but certainly not least, Amrit Agastya, incoming student at the Australian National University. Amrit is the current best speaker and champion of Malaysian National Championships and a World University's ESL semi-finalist. A student at Taylor's University, she'll be furthering her studies at the Australian National University. Also a local here. Great. So these are the speakers. Let's give them a round of applause. Before today, we have Rizal as timekeeper. We have a very good timekeeper, ladies and gentlemen. So without further ado, we invite the Prime Minister to start the debate. Here. Is everyone okay? All good?
We must understand something. The systems in which our lives and the decisions we make is governed by capitalism. How relevant you are and how powerful of a stake that your culture can have, and whether or not you retain the people who want to opt into that culture depends on your presence in stores. Depends if people buy your products. It depends if people want to buy into your culture. For those reasons, and to retain the limited amount of power that traditional or indigenous people have in Malaysia, commercialization is the most powerful way forward. What is the stance coming from the side of affirmative? It's simple, really. We fully support the commercialization of indigenous culture. So what does this look like? It can look like a lot of things. Maybe it's from Panuti running a certain amount of companies or crafts in order to sell indigenous art. Maybe it's the Kuala Lumpur Performing Arts Center having certain kinds of performances that have indigenous traits in it. Maybe it's the Malaysian tourism industry that establishes some level of tourism or guides entering certain areas that are traditionally inhabited by traditional people. Or it also looks like indigenous people potentially opening up their own stores, selling designs of like clothes that have indigenous designs that are available for sale to the mass amount of people. So there is something we must understand in this debate. Commercialization is happening. The sale of culture and the interconnectivity of culture is happening whether we like it or not. People want to assimilate, and people also want a culture that is acceptable, have a seat, and a culture that is also easily accessible. Given this characterization, how do we move forward? The first question I'd like to ask is, why is this necessary? So we have to understand that this is a fast-moving and integrated world. Things are multicultural. There are multiple cultures that people are exposed to on a daily basis. However, the existence of multiculturalism does not suggest that all cultures are evil or equal, right? Sorry, a little bit of mispronunciation there, right? But given this analysis, some cultures are valued more than others. These cultures are the ones you see the most. So for instance, the way that we dress is oftentimes controlled or constrained by the way Westerners dress. Jeans, shirts, my decision to wear a suit instead of my traditional attire was all controlled by media or the type of narratives that I face on a daily basis. Why is this important? Because we must recognize that the biggest threat that the indigenous people face in Malaysia are the fact that their young Habasi are opting out of their culture. They want something that is cooler. They want something that is more modern. At the point in which you make these people pick and choose between the two, it is likely that they choose the culture that is most relevant to them and that the one that has the most presence. More often than not, this presence is the one of Western influence and one that is distinct from culture. So what does this mean? It means for the most amount of people, the easiest decision to make is to leave that indigenous culture because it's not as easily accessible. So if I go to H&M, I don't have designs that appeal to me. I don't have designs that are relevant to myself and my culture. Maybe it's the batik design that I really like that my tribe created and I really want to wear it, but it doesn't have that same fashion sting or that same kind of praise that I could get with another type of dress. This is why I would choose to opt out. What is the harm of this? The harm is that for most people who choose to opt out, this culture becomes less relevant and the amount of power it has is also reduced. Before I move on, I feel a bit bad. Let's take a question.
Right. Do you think it's important that communities have control over how people use their culture?
Okay, so I was expecting this. I think they're going to run a case that everything's going to be appropriated. Now the evil capitalists are going to change the meaning of it. So I think there's a couple of reasonable things we can suggest. So number one, this debate happens in Malaysia where, to the most extent possible, indigenous people are the ones running the companies that produce this art. So for example, when it comes to the Malaysian tourism industry, it's localized communities of Sabahans who run the tours and get that pay cut or get that amount of money for them. But when it comes to local shops, they are the people producing the wares. They are the one running the factory. So I think we can establish there is some level of control. But even then, I think even if you don't have control, it's great because your culture is now more accessible. What does this mean? It means, given that you're living in a capitalist society, you should use the mechanisms of capitalism for your benefit. It means larger scales of production, so you get more shirts. Or maybe the type of shirt that you want has a better quality because you can produce more of them. So if I had to choose between a traditional shirt or another, I can have that same quality that I can get in a H&M shirt. That kind of incentive and that kind of existence of potential quality is great for indigenous people for two reasons. Number one, they have a presence in the mainstream society. So that means every time, even as me, a person who is not indigenous, I see those designs. It's viscerally stuck in my head. And even if I don't purchase it, my friends who are indigenous now have that option. They don't have to fly back to Sabah, they can get it in Kuala Lumpur. I'm not indigenous, but I am a minority within a minority. There's a lot of things that I cannot opt and a lot of things I can't get from H&M. I would love to have that. And if I can have it from my indigenous friends, that's a benefit. Thank you.
We thank the Prime Minister for opening this debate. We'd like to invite the Leader of Opposition to start the debate on behalf of the Opposition.
Test. Hello, can you all hear me? The clothes we wear, the accessories we put on,
Even the small dances and songs that we hum to on our way to work might not mean that much to us. At best, it might be a fashion statement, something that we want to look cool in, something that we want to gain friends with. But to some people, notably the indigenous tribes that live by those songs, live by those clothing, those things mean their life. And it is simply unfair to destroy that meaning through commercialization. I'll answer a few questions in my speech. The first question I'll answer: why culture is priceless and must not be objectively valued? Why can't we place a price on culture? Commercialization, in its truest essence, means placing a monetary value on something. In this case, culture. This looks like what the Prime Minister said, selling some goods or having tourism agencies promote their culture. Why do we think that this, in principle, cannot be commercialized? Because culture is subjective. People appreciate culture to different things. So for someone who's not of the culture, maybe I appreciate songs by their catchiness. Maybe I appreciate songs by their tunes. Maybe I appreciate clothes by their trendiness, how attractive they look. But to indigenous people, that's not the lens that they use to appreciate songs or to appreciate their clothing. Their appreciation takes on a much more spiritual tone, takes on a much more meaningful tone. And this difference in valuation means that the valuation that the majority places on their culture will be substantially different from how the minority places. Why would this happen? Because don't let Prime Minister get away. I'll take him on. Don't let Prime Minister get away by saying that as long as the indigenous people run the company, it'll be fine. The thing about commercialization is, it is very rare that the people who run the companies have total control. Instead, you have to pander towards your consumer base, people who buy your products. So it doesn't matter who runs the company, it matters who buys your products. And in the case where you commercialize to the majority, it is up in the hands of the majority, which has their different lenses. Therefore, this difference in valuation means that often the majority is unable to accurately value the price and the price and the quality of that particular culture. Before I answer my second question, sure.
So thanks for responding to me. Secondly, even if you have to lose some amount of control, your site sacrifices that presence that you need in stores in order to keep young indigenous people interested in your culture. How do you justify that?
I'll do that. I'll deal with that in a while. Second question: why is it important to preserve autonomy? Because culture means so much more to the individuals than fashion means to the majority. It is easily replaceable to the majority. A fashion item is easily replaceable. If you can't get this particular fashion item, you can get something from, let's say, H&M, something from the Western communities. But to indigenous individuals, cultural items are irreplaceable. You cannot just substitute a cultural item for something else because that culture is rooted in centuries worth of tradition, centuries worth of history. It is irreplaceable, and therefore we should prioritize their autonomy. What are some of the harms of commercialization? And this is where I deal with that question and their case. The first harm is that you bastardize the culture. Why? We see in America how Northern American sports teams use Native American headgear as a symbol of bravery, symbol of aggression, and they basically just take it as a sporting item. We see in Malaysia how certain headgears or certain cultural items for the Kadasan Dusun tribe has been modified and made more trendy because it does not appeal to the young people of today. This means that it loses its original meaning. The original meaning of the cultural item being an item used in a sacrificial ritual or an item used to symbolize years and years of tradition is reduced to a mere fashion symbol that Kim Kardashian or Beyonce can come up with as well. That's not fair to the ancestors of these indigenous tribes who spent centuries perfecting their tradition and passing it down from generation to generation. But secondly, even if they want to talk about the benefits of commercialization in terms of money, in terms of relevance, it does not reach the indigenous community because most of its profits goes to the fashion designers. And although in status quo, you might have a majority of indigenous people running these kind of companies, in a world where it's widely commercialized, it incentivizes competition because it is profitable, it is attractive, and this is when you get more individuals who are less likely to be equally malevolent, more likely to be profit-minded into this kind of industries. This means that money is less likely going back to the indigenous community. They are less likely to gain the kind of power and relevance that they so need. What does our world look like? In the best case scenario, we get some kind of organic change through education, through campaigning by people who are not profit-minded. But even if we have to defend a world where these indigenous people can only look at our culture and appreciate it through their own lens, in their own houses, we rather them do that rather than to force them watch their culture being paraded on a catwalk through a television that they can barely afford.
Thank you, Opposition Leader, for that speech. Further debate on the Parliament bench. We'd like to invite Deputy Prime Minister here.
As a writer, it gets very frustrating when people say you cannot put a price tag on culture. But I would say you can definitely put a price tag on what the writer or the creators of those art have to eat, have to pay their bills, have to pay the rental, they have to take transport to work. And for the indigenous communities that produce these kinds of art, having that money, and it's exactly putting a price tag on their culture that will enable them to sustain their culture and give them the ability to continue producing the same art that we want to treasure. So I'll talk about two things. Firstly, one is how to addressing the issue of autonomy. Do we really take away autonomy from the indigenous community when we commercialize their work? Secondly, I'll talk about national discourse, how we push for policy changes when indigenous communities become part of the national consciousness. So firstly, do we really take away autonomy from indigenous communities? I think there are two things here to recognize. The first thing is that the way the government operates in Malaysia in terms of commercializing the indigenous community is very collaborative. Like what my Prime Minister set up, you always work with the local communities. They are the tour guides, they are the people who preserve and produce those culture. One, government have a very natural incentive to preserve the authenticity of those things because that's what makes the tourism and the craft industry valuable. That's what tourists want to get when they come here. But also secondly, on a global level, we're moving more and more towards a conscientious form of consumerism. People value things like fair trade. We want to know that the government is not ripping off the indigenous community when we buy those products. People care about how authentic this product is. Does this product really is sustainable in the way that it's produced? And I think all these trends come together to give very strong incentives for governments and NGOs alike, and even GLCs or arts and people in the arts and culture industry to preserve the authenticity and to give back the autonomy to those communities that produce those art in the first place.
On the point. If there is already a global trend towards appreciating culture and appreciating authenticity, why is there a need to commercialize and further market it to a wider base of individuals?
The market exists, that's why you want to commercialize it. So you want to make money out of it, you want to put the identity of this indigenous community to the forefront and give them the visibility that they want. So this is the second thing that I want to talk about. For far too long, I think in the Malaysian national consciousness, the indigenous communities has always been an afterthought. They are the done line on your forms. They are the people who governments maybe sometimes don't care about and go in and do things like deforestation, taking away their land. There are 18 ethnic groups in Malaysia, and ask anyone in this hall to name 5 and give you a summary of who they are. Many might struggle to do that. How do we change this? I think the most powerful way forward is to ensure the visibility of these groups beyond the 2-page that we learn in Standard 5 textbook in primary school. What does this mean? When we sell, when we commercialize and make indigenous community a big part of our tourism industry, or when we sell their artwork and marks towards the public in stores and in shops, we create 3 outcomes. Number one, we give them the livelihood, right? First and foremost, the money that they need to continue their training, to continue buying the facilities, and the resources that they need to market and sell their products. That means the more and more indigenous community people will choose to stay within that culture because there's a livelihood to be made out of it. But secondly, you give strong economic incentives for governments to preserve these communities as well. Right now, it's much easier to just log off the whole forest, deforest the whole place, take the land, because that gives them a lot of money. But if you give the government another reason to compare and tell them that preserving this culture gives you more money from tourism, gives you more money from selling the arts and their crafts, then maybe the comparison is maybe the most sustainable way to build the economy of the country is not through deforestation, but by preserving these communities. And that's why it's important in preserving the livelihood. But lastly, pushing these visibility of these groups into the national consciousness. When we constantly see their presence on TV, in music video, in our advertisements, in KL Pack, in our products that we buy, the more we are likely to think about these groups, the more we are likely to care about their plight, the more we are likely to take action and bugger our MPs when we hear of things like deforestation and injustice that's done to the indigenous communities. And that's why commercialization is so important. Not only like what we say in Prime Minister, to give them the livelihood, to preserve the culture, but also to give them the visibility, to help them and prevent them from further abuse.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. The next speech will invite Deputy Opposition Leader. Yeah.
Firstly, before I begin, I'd like to wish a good afternoon to all our distinguished guests. As a fan of H&M and of Malaysian culture, I've heard a lot of things being said about fashion and culture in this debate, so I'm very, very happy to be here. The government side of this debate operated on a very simple premise. The government side of this debate basically want to protect cultures. They want cultures to survive. And their logic is that by commercializing cultures, by taking the cultures of indigenous communities, by marketing that, we generate more money, and that money is then donated back to the people. Yes, guys, we're all Malaysians, we've heard that before. But on opposition side, in principle, we agree, ladies and gentlemen, we agree that on our side, that culture might be less accessible. Cultures might be less popular. They might be less sexy, less marketable. But on our side, what we want is to protect the ownership of culture. And we agree to an extent that some cultures might even die out. Languages, fashion trends, traditions might die out. But what's most important is who has control over that culture, not necessarily how popular or how many people practice that culture. That's what we want. We want communities to own their cultures. We don't want the majority to take away the cultures away from minorities and tell the stories through their lens. So there's two things I want to talk about in my speech. The first one is about commercialization for the sake of survival. Now, what the government side forgot in this debate is when they talked about commercialization, they forgot to tell us who is in power and who controls that commercialization. As Michel Foucault said, discourse is not about how much talking is done, but it's about who does that talking. Have a seat. So what the government side lacked in this debate was a concise analysis of how cultures are portrayed. And we think on side opposition that when a minority loses out their culture to a majority group, especially when that majority group controls the media, is more popular, has more power in terms of money and in terms of resources, we think minorities eventually lose the power to tell stories through their own lens. And that's crucial. And that leads me to my second point, why commercialization is so bad. The problem is with commercialization, any form of cultural appropriation, is that the majority group or the people in power often tell stories. They often pick and choose which aspects of culture they want to portray. And this is crucial because culture is supposed to be a bastion, a sort of ship that moves through the timeline of history and tells the stories of different cultures. But with commercialization of indigenous cultures, the majority group often picks sexy parts of the culture to sell and then leaves out more crucial aspects of that culture. And this is very important. That's why when you go to Las Vegas, if you go to a casino in Las Vegas with a Native American theme, that's all in good and everyone's walking around in Native American attire, but nobody's talking about the disenfranchisement of Native Americans or the huge problems concerning Native Americans in terms of racism and alcoholism and all these forms of problems that the communities go through. When we go to the World Cup in South Africa in 2010, everyone was blowing on that vuvuzela. Nobody thinks about how that vuvuzela, or what it means to the people and the communities in South Africa. When we watch Pocahontas, those are aspects of the culture that they want to tell. And why is this crucial? It's because culture is supposed to tell stories of communities. Many of these communities have gone through systematic discrimination, racism, and these stories don't get told. Instead, these aspects of their fashion and their culture get sold in H&M and Lovisa, and then nobody really goes into detail as to what these things might mean for these people. No, thank you, just in a while. The second problem with this, ladies and gentlemen, is that it teaches us, and this deals directly with Deborah's excellent point about survival of culture. Now, the problem in Malaysia, especially, is that when we portray cultures in this way, it teaches us to fetishize this culture. It makes this culture look exotic, different, and it's something that we can get in and out of. So this is hugely problematic because, yeah, sure.
So the incentive to tell stories and portray certain cultures still exists in your world. The difference is your indigenous people don't own companies and they have no power whatsoever. How do you defend that?
Okay, so we would say that we would rather less people talk about someone's culture and practice that culture if it means that those people can practice those cultures in ways that they think fit. So we don't care if these cultures aren't popular, but we want them to be owned by the communities that own them. So what does it mean when we exoticize and fetishize cultures? It shows us, ladies and gentlemen, that it's something different, it's something weird. It's something cool maybe to do at certain times. We can dress up in their attire and wear their stuff. We don't have to really care about them or care about their history or treat them as equals, but we can just sort of have fun with their cultures. That's why whenever we see and this is no disrespect to anyone in this room, but whenever we see like advertisements for tourism in Malaysia, they often portray indigenous cultures in jungles, in their longhouses, but it's not really a balanced narrative of what these communities go through. So instead, it teaches us to fetishize them. It teaches us to treat them as different and see them as someone very, very different, ladies and gentlemen. So instead, what do we want? We don't want cultures to be commercialized. We want communities to own their cultures and tell stories the way they want them to be told. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Leader of Opposition. For the last speech, the government bench, we invite Government Whip. There.
Okay, I'm just going to adjust this. Testing. Yeah, I guess that works. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So Rafiq was quite graphic in his presentation of the speech. He says that culture is a ship that tells a story. And unfortunately, the ship in the side of negative is going to be called Titanic. Because that ship will sink in their world when indigenous people are not on that ride to tell the stories, when they choose to isolate themselves in the name of protecting that culture. If commercialization is the mainstream, then we think it's a strategic choice for indigenous communities to insert themselves into that mainstream, to commercialize culture, even if it's the most sacred thing that is part of the construction of your identity. Because absent which, we think cultural erasure is more likely to be prominent when governments choose to deforest entire lands because you are not as relevant and then you can be reduced to done lying, then we don't think they get to protect these people. They just expose them to more discrimination and more threat that actually harms their survivability. There are essentially two questions in this debate. One, is commercialization good? And number two, yeah, I think it's just one question. Okay, yeah, let's just stick with that. Let's just stick with one question. Okay? So commercialization. Let's look at how it actually is commercialized in Malaysia. When you have things like the Rainforest Music Festival that allows the Penan group to come out and present their Onggong ensemble, or when you have tattoo shops in Kuching that portray indigenous communities presenting their berjalai or bunga terong tattoos, all of these are instances that do show there is some prominence within the indigenous communities itself to come out and to present and portray their culture in a specific way. Even the Malaysian government, through their 10th Malaysian plan, decided that tourism, especially eco-tourism, is going to be a very big contributing factor to our economy, and as a result of which made sure that entire parts of forests were maintained so that people can go into those forests and actually visit and see what their lives are like. Now, I understand that the concern from this side is that fetishization happens, and I think fetishization is often a symptom of very colonial narratives, and these are people that they can exoticize and we can see in a specific way. But that reality is not as prominent as they claim to be, because when people choose to put these things on, I agree on both sides, there will be people who will say stupid things anyway, like with or without your cultural gear. Maybe if they have it, they'll be more likely to do it, but I think those people are on the margins. Because when businesses choose to portray a certain type of culture, they have an acumen to decide that if I exoticize or fetishize it in a way that's disrespectful to it, the way the Washington Redskins does, then there will be a strong opposition to the narrative or the way this perception is created. And that is important because it shows that the incentive to correct such views are present, and that you cannot just get away because you're a big company trying to fetishize it. So I think that harm is significantly reduced on their side. But secondly, it's also about accepting the reality that when commercialization happens, whether or not you like it, that is more likely to be a constant thing. So if a company decides that it's in their strategic interest to commercialize certain indigenous cultures, that thing will happen in both worlds. The question is, who will now exert more control over it? I agree that maybe the indigenous community may not have as much capital, or they may only be consultants, but insofar as they are part of that process and can regulate the discussion and how things are presented, that is comparatively better than in your world where they lock themselves up and allow big companies to portray it as and when they wish, without you actually having a say on what that looks like for your culture specifically. Yes.
If the market for these indigenous costumes and indigenous tattoos are your mainstream population, can you tell me why they're likely to prioritize authenticity over mainstream?
So I don't think the consumer base is homogeneous. There are different consumer groups. Maybe one side, one consumer base will prioritize authenticity. Another consumer base will prioritize how palatable or how fashionable it looks like. I think in both instances, it's advantageous to the indigenous communities. The first group, in terms of authenticity, these people who want a genuine experience, who really want to look at what their lives are, I think these are people that benefit us because they go to a lot of the ecotourism packages that empower indigenous communities to carry out those tours, to present their dances, to portray how certain ceremonies are taking place. And so that economic benefit is still retained on our side. Let's talk about the people who only want it for a fashion sense. I think even in that aspect, it's very important for the reasons now being presented. Because integration being something that is on the rise, since a lot of younger individuals within indigenous communities have access to the internet, are going to national schools, and every time they participate in the mainstream economy, if they see less and less things to identify themselves, this is when cultural erasure is more prominent, because it's not something that the mainstream will erase, but rather those within the indigenous communities who realize there are very few things there for me, so I'm just going to assimilate to the mainstream. In that reality, Titanic is more likely to be in your world.
Thank you, Government Whip. To wrap up this debate, we invite Opposition Whip.
Okay. The tattoo of the Iban community is specifically hand tattooed because it allows the person, the elderly person, to pass on a protection against evil. The suggestion on the government bench that we can have stick-on tattoos in H&M and still have the same value belies any reality and any protection of this community. I want to talk about one thing: who protects indigenous communities better? 3 parts to this argument. The first is access, because the affirmative team in this debate suggested that having more shops that sell batik clothes or sell indigenous clothes or stick-on tattoos is a good in this debate. Let's ask ourselves if it is indeed a good. The first thing I'm going to suggest is the mere access of a product doesn't mean the product is of high quality. Because if you look at all the analysis in this debate, if it's true that majority groups have more capital, if they are more likely to sell their products to H&M, they are more likely to end up in your malls, in mega mall. You don't see Iban people flocking to Big Valley every single day. Your consumer base is largely a majority group. So who is this accent for? Is it for the person in Sarawak who finds very dearly their tattoo is important to them? Or is it you and I who think of it as a fashion statement? I say it's the latter. Therefore, I'm uncertain what the value of access in this debate, because it doesn't protect the people which their culture comes from. Which is the second part of this. What is the quality likely to be? The suggestion we hear from them is it's going to be authentic. But why? How do people know what authentic is? Unless you consult the person who is of an Iban descent or of a Kadazan Dusun descent, you're unlikely to find out the true meaning of it. Even when you do find out, how are you going to sell it? How many people in this room know what an actual tattoo means to a single person? It looks nice, it's a bird, let's put it on my head. Nobody actually gets to the actual meaning that it represents. Therefore, I'm uncertain how authentic it's likely to be. Who are the people that use that going to talk to our government and say, yeah, we should protect rainforests when they don't even know what the tattoo on their hand stands for? So I really, at this point in the debate, I don't know why people would care about the people behind those tattoos or the people behind those costumes, as opposed to wearing it as a fashion statement when it's on sale at Lovisa. So I think these two things prove on the side of affirmative, on the side of government, that it's very unlikely that the people you want to protect are the ones that are likely to get those benefits. The second, financial empowerment. This is ridiculous for a couple of reasons. The first thing I'm going to say is very unrealistic for you to tell me that people from the small communities in Sarawak and in Sabah are likely to get hired by H&M as their consultants. They won't hire the people from Iban or the people from other indigenous communities. They will hire a PR firm who roughly knows what indigenous tattoo does, but has the money, has the support, has the community to sell their product outside. So why would they hire the local person when they could hire someone who's better able to sell their product for them? Which is actually the reason why they don't get better visibility. Dave said there's a rainforest festival where they actually invited people of that group to come and speak about them. But why would you do that in a world in which your product is massively sold to everyone? Everyone can wear your outfit. It isn't unique anymore. It doesn't have the same cultural significance that it has. It's just a piece. You can wear to a concert. You can wear to your father's birthday, for example. It no longer has that uniqueness that attracts people to this event. So because of that, I really am convinced that the government team doesn't get more access for these people. They don't get better quality of their product. And even when they do, the people that benefit aren't the people that need it. You and I, who could do without one more kayak outfit. We can definitely save them the time.
Yeah.
Yes, Dave.
When children from indigenous communities in your world leave to attend national schools and are assimilating with mainstream culture, how do you protect the indigenous culture for them?
But in your world, the Iban kid will be sitting in a class because they cannot afford to go to H&M and buy clothes. But every single one of their peers can afford to wear the Iban clothes. And we're talking about it. That kid will feel more excluded in your world because everyone else has ownership of their culture except for them. In a world in which we didn't have H&M talking about it, where we had every Iban person doing their own tattoos, their own outfit, it would be theirs. I mean, it wouldn't be popular. You couldn't talk to your friend about it. But by God, it will protect you from the evil spirits. It will give you meaning when you go to sleep, because that's what matters most. So it isn't that more and more people wearing it makes you happier. It is the meaning and appreciation of it that makes you a better human being. Therefore, we think the kid will be better off out. Which is the second part. Who gets better presents? Because their suggestion is, once we don't have commercialization, Iban people are bored, they're never going to be able to get traction for themselves. That's ridiculous. In the communities where they exist, to the people that belong in their culture, they sell products all the time amongst themselves, not for a monetary value, but because intergenerationally, you want to pass down you want to pass down some tradition and cultures and norms. That kind of intergenerational passing on has far more value than any monetary stamp can quantify. And therefore, that's the type of community that we create. For all those reasons, the suggestion that more money and capitalist structures within a highly sensitive group is better off for its communities, it belies reality, and more importantly, doesn't protect the people we need to protect in this debate. For all those reasons, I beg you to oppose.
Thank you so much, debaters, for the debate. Went across the floor and shake hands. So this is what's happening right now. My colleagues will be setting up the stage for the forum. So we have a bit of time before we do that. Just gonna start to come down. So while they set it up, allow me to present the remarks of the forum today. The forum that we have next is the Modern Cinema and the Fate of Art and Culture in Malaysia. Today we have Melissa Ranita Salva, an award-winning spoken word poet, author and organizer of The Walls, The Talk, and Democracy. We have panelists Datuk Dr. Farida American, Azrina Marwan, Fashali Fazli, and Jatun Fong. I'll let Melissa Ranita introduce them later. But just a quick preamble context about the forum today. So this is what was printed for me. So I'm just going to read it up. I apologize if it sounds, disingenuous. Culture is not static. It evolves. It is not just about the artistic expressions or cultural products like dance or theater. It is also about our values and practices. It forms every aspect of our lives. The Malaysian Institute for Debate Public Speaking believes that it is important for us to appreciate and understand the soul of Malaysia. Creative minds from all across the Malaysian artistic and cultural spectrum face a wide range of issues. Is the commercialization of indigenous culture acceptable? Is westernization of Malaysian art a concern? How do we market our unique cultural identity to a wider, more international audience? With the goal of exposing the public to the rich and diverse tapestry of Malaysian culture, MIDP brings you a forum comprised of leading figures from all across the artistic and cultural spectrum. And now is just in time. Ladies and gentlemen, we present to you the panelists and the moderator for the forum. Let's give them a huge round of applause.
Hello, everybody. This is the part where you say hello. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us for this forum this afternoon. I would really like if everybody could just shimmy over to the middle. It would be really helpful. Could we please give another round of applause to the amazing debaters who had an interesting conversation just now? Yes. Thank you. All right. So before we get things started, I just want to do a very quick survey so we know how many artists or soon-to-be artists are in the audience. Okay, shall we do that? So can we just see a show of hands? How many of you are planning to dabble in the arts? Please raise your hand. Fantastic. How many of you? No, because that's the second question. Maybe we'll get them in the second question. So the second question is, how many of you are consumers of local theatre and art? Please raise your hand. Oh. There we go. All right. And now that we know exactly who we're speaking to, I just like to introduce myself very quickly. My name is Melissa Aniti Salva. I am currently the co-curator for If Walls for Top Poetry Open Mic and this year's Georgetown Literary Festival. And our forum today is a very interesting one. It is titled The Modern Seniman, The Fate of Arts and Culture in Malaysia. And fate is a very complex word. In English, the dictionaries define it as the development of events outside a person's control, or events that are predetermined by a higher power. It's as if we're saying it's written in the stars. In Malay, fate is directly translated into nasib. And if you translate nasib one more time, it means luck or chance. That's right? No. It's fate. So it's chance or luck. And while they carry a more positive connotation, the word fate in both languages ultimately suggests there's a lack of sense of agency, as if our destiny lies in the hands of circumstance. And I want to just make this very clear, I don't know about you, but I'm not very fond of that word. I'm not very fond of the word fate, because as a Hindu person, I know for a fact that when I was born, no astrologer looked at me and said, this one is going to be an artist. So that never happened. So our panelists today also did not allow the stars to dictate the direction of the Malaysian art scene. And beyond God and the government, our country's arts and culture has always thrived against the odds of poor funding, government support, censorship, and a plethora of troubles that our parents tried to warn us about, and we still went ahead. We have always taken fate into our own hands to shape the progress within our respective fields, and this is exactly what each of my panelists here today have done. And of course, in the era of Malaysia Baru, there is a new hope among artists and art practitioners. There's a call for a national council. There was a petition going around for that. There's greater avenues for funding, and of course, there's tremendous opportunity for new storytelling. or stories that you were previously not able to talk about. So we're living in this new paradigm, and here and now we're hoping for more and better, but are we all hoping for the same thing? That is what we hope to talk about today. And also, let's have a conversation about the new state of affairs and how they affect each and every one of us in this new era. So I'm going to introduce each and every one of our speakers today. So she is affectionately known as, referred to in the performing arts community as the First Lady of Malaysian Theatre. And Dr. Farida American has played a significant role in defining Malaysian theatre in the 60s and 70s. She co-founded the Actor Studio with her husband, Joe Hasham. And I understand that in June 2003, the floods had destroyed it. And she then persevered and started KL PAC, which is home for a lot of Malaysian theatre and artists, which is set up by YTL Group, Yayasan Budi Penyayang, and Actor Studio. And this year, Dr. Farida was awarded an honorary doctorate in the arts by Taylor's University, and she also appeared in Dentistry, which is fantastic, by the way, in May, and will be appearing in the restaging of Adam the Musical later this year. Our next panelist is Azrina Marwan. Azrina Marwan is a graphic designer, specializing in identity, web print, and design. She is the founding member of the Malaysian Design Archive to map the development and graphic design in Malaysia. From the period before independence, 1957, in Malaysia until now. And MDA is a platform to trace and document Malaysian endangered design legacy and to preserve Malaysia's historical past. And another interesting thing you should know, she's also the governor of Perempuan Mereka and the co-founder of Sejarah Wanita, both initiatives that are geared towards highlighting the history of women and paving the way for women's voices in the arts. Please give her a big hand. And of course, we have Fashali Fazli. Fashali is the director, a playwright, a lecturer of the National Academy of Arts and Culture and Heritage in Malaysia called Aswara. He has written and directed award-winning plays such as Theatre Juta Juta. He won Best Director for. He's also won Best Ensemble Performance in both Cameroonian Awards. And this year, he will be busy with touring his recent play, which I hope he will tell us more about later in the set. Please give him a big hand and welcome him to the stage. And finally, we have, I believe you took a flight to get here today. Yes. We're very fortunate to have you. Miss Jacqueline Fong, fun fact, she quit her successful career in banking and finance and to take over an atelier of Songket weavers in Sarawak, and a workshop that was initially set up by a foundation established by Her Royal Highness Tuanku Nur Zahira in 2008. And over the years, she and a co-founder have worked to grow the workshop into what is known today as Tanoti, and Tanoti Crafts. She has been bringing Latan handicrafts of the Penang community to the mainstream market and creating a flow of economic power for them. And this project has empowered nearly 18 communities over 20 villages. She also is the owner of a beautifully carved Batik Boutique Hotel in Kuching. So I'm sure she will tell us more about that. Please give all my panelists a warm welcome. So we have the microphones here. All right, and let's get started very quickly. What are the projects and initiatives that you are currently working on that you can share with us today? Yes, would you like to start, Dr. Farida? Oh, yeah? Yes.
Sorry for that. Firstly, I want to say sorry for some late, and secondly, I have a toothache. This is my fourth day, so I'm sorry if sometimes like I make a weird sound. And I will speak both in Malay and English. I hope you understand both Malaysia. With my recent project, so next week I will fly to Jakarta to present my work in progress. Then for the
I present there will be about father and son relationship, how this, well, we have very complex relationship between son and father. We love some, our father we don't tell because we know. Okay, and then and the work will be presented at Aswara in September, and also I will fly again to Jogja in October to present my puppetry work there for Pesta Bonica Jakarta 6th edition, the international. I think I'm the first Malaysian to fly there to perform in that festival, and then. And then in December, I will go to Singapore to present my new work for Project Suitcase with Tita Eka Matrao, the Malay theatre community, theatre company in Singapore. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm 35, but look like 25, right?
I guess so. I think we're playing pass the microphone this way, and I'm going to pass it back to Serena. All right.
I don't have such an illustrious portfolio going forward, but we are a very small handicraft company, and we're trying to do a lot of things to bring craft out, take it up a notch, and then bring it out of Malaysia. We have an exhibition in the UK in September that we've been invited to go to. And I think that will be all for this year. Next year, we will be exhibiting in New York and hopefully San Francisco. So the idea is for us to continue to celebrate. So if there are any opportunities for us to go out and celebrate craft, whether they're indigenous or not, it doesn't matter. It's our identity. So we will try and do that. Hopefully capture as much audience and as much awareness towards Malaysian craft as possible. So stay tuned, I guess. Actually, currently we have an exhibition starting today. It's a forbidden food exhibition. We had gotten the Banan artisans to create large objects for installation. It's in conjunction with Rainforest Springs Festival that started yesterday.
Serena? Thank you so much for inviting me. Okay, so works that are ongoing at the moment. So I'm a bit of I have a split personality. One is I'm one of the founding members of Malaysian Archive. So actually the three of us, myself, Jack and Simon, we actually have full-time jobs. So we actually run MBA as a part-time basis. So there is my full-time job as a designer, and then there is sort of like your role in MBA and trying to keep the space running. So I'll sort of like maybe tell both. Yeah. So as an individual, I think me and a couple of friends started this thing called Cerita Undi. It's right after the May 9th GE14 transformation. So we started this project to sort of collect stories of why we vote, and also trying to document as many voices as we can in trying to also keep ourselves in check, and like why do we vote? Who is in power? It's actually the kuasa rakyat and not so much. Trying to sort of remind the government we voted for you to be there, and why we voted. Is it because of our family? Is it because of economic reasons? And all of those things. So that's, you can actually read some of the stories on ceritaundi.org. So that's one.
Personally, I'm also working on a project with someone from Pusat Sejarah Rakyat. So they actually, a lot of stories on leftist history in Malaysia that's not documented. So I think we are going to sort of start to bring out all of this document that was deemed bad and evil in this sort of like our historical narrative, and trying to bring out all of these marginalized voices to start to include them in sort of like our, when we talk about our own history. So that's also something that is sort of like what I'm also doing with two other friends. And then what else? I think I'm also I think I'm also in that exhibition that you are referring to in September. Mrs. Archive is also a part of it. The one in London. So I think so that's what Tanoti sounds. Yeah, I think it's back in Malaysia, right? Yeah, I think it's back in Malaysia. What else? Malaysian National Archive is also going to sort of do this project with one of the students. So we work a lot with students and researchers. So one of the students is a Malaysian student. He wants to start a project on looking at Malayan history through 100 projects. So we are going to do that, I think, early next year. Okay, I think that's all.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for the offer to hear what we have got doing now. Let me tell you something. Over the last couple of weeks, we have been having rehearsals for Adam the Musical, which is a musical that is about HIV/AIDS. But when I was in KLPAC, I was, even though I have been there for many, many years, it's just this pride and this passion that we have. There were so many activities going through the studios of KLPAC. There was the orchestra rehearsing, there was Pan Productions having their show in Pentas 2, there is an opera that was rehearsing in Pentas 1 and opened night before last, and there was Kelvin Wong who was rehearsing for Indie Live. So this kind of gives you a wonderful buzz about what is happening in the performing arts scene. But what is sad is this. What is sad is the publicity that is required from all of us who are sitting on this stage today. The publicity that is truly necessary and required is unfortunately very, very lacking. And therefore, you do not know of what is going on in the performing arts scene, not just in Peninsular Malaysia, but also in Sabah and Sarawak. So that's kind of, the sadness that we tend to face every day of our lives. We do it, but it's not known to the rakyat of Malaysia.
Yes, I mean, and do you all feel the same way about the fact that you're doing all this work and only people in the scene or people on your Facebook friend list are the ones who are attending or coming by for it? Yeah. I just want to follow up a little bit more on the first question before we proceed into publicity, because that is a whole other thing. And I want to know about we have a new government now. There's new hope and this new era that is coming in. And do you think that your work as an artist is evolving because of this change, of this paradigm shift that we're experiencing right now? How has all this change affected your work in any way? Are there certain stories that initially you thought, I can't tell this story, and now you can?
I think it is a little bit too early in the day to be sounding overly positive about anything for Malaysia Baru. It is still a very new baby.
Yes,
so you do not know what to expect. Yes. You never know whether he's going to grow up screaming or laughing. So we are, of course, living in hope. That is always the case when we do what we do in the performing arts or otherwise. We live in hope. But having said that, we have never been afraid of any form of governance that we have faced. However awful the governance has been, we still strive on and do what is necessary, that we feel is very necessary for the country. So, I won't use that language, right? So, somebody said bugger just now, so I can say bugger. Bugger if they do not help us. But of course we want them to help us. Now, we do not know yet the fate of the arts in the hands of the new Minister of Culture, Arts and Heritage. At the moment, he is just a name. He's not even a face. So we will wait and see. But on the other hand, we will not just wait and see. We will do what is necessary for us to move forward.
Right, right. And Fashali, when you're talking about the work that you have been producing and you're going to tour with, do you think that touring that show in, let's say 5 years ago, was not something that you were able to do? Or do you think that touring the show today would have been, it is significantly better because of such a resource that you might have?
I think my involvement in art, I started involved in arts like very active in last 2-3 years. After I came back study. Previously, I just focused my play to be seen to the Malaysian public. I never thought that I could stage my play on the international stage. But I think after this Malaysia Baru and everything, I don't like Farida said, I don't think that there will be any different and changes like very soon. But the one that I'm touring is the effect of Cendana initiative, which is launched by Najib before last year. Thank you, Najib. I'm lucky to get that opportunity and to ask, hey, I need some money to travel to Jogja and everything. And this one, not all, but just one production. That's okay lah. So yeah, and I think macam Farida cakap, after this Malaysia Baru, I don't think that because previously when my play is not very provocative, very satirical. People enjoy saya play, not like macam Bapak Sinti yang terlalu nakal-nakal punya play. Dia controversial punya play. My play is very safe. Come and watch. But yeah, I will do my what I can, boleh buat yang terbaik lah. And yeah, no, I don't think after Malaysia Baru that I will change. I want to do this and that because saya tidak menjadi diri saya yang sebenar. So that's not me. I will do what I always do and continue. Yeah.
Azrina, when you talk about the work that you are currently pursuing, are there any resources that you are currently looking for, or have you received in the past that has enabled you to do this, or were you always self-sustaining?
Okay, so the project Music is an Archive, this year is our 10th year. So the first 8 years, it was only online. We were an online resource, library, archive on graphic design work. And that was self-sustaining. So it was like, you just pay for the domain or whatever you want to beli, you pay with your own money lah. And then when we were given an opportunity to of a space in the Cheongshan building, we were actually, we didn't have any money, we just didn't. So we thought, okay, should we do this? And we did, so we thought, okay, let's try and see. I've never really thought that our online archive would actually become a physical archive. So it's okay, say yes, and memang tak ada duit. So I think the first month, the space was completely empty. I didn't even have money to, we didn't even have money to buy shelves. That was how bad it was. And then we applied for Think City funding berapa kali kept getting rejected. And then finally, as we were setting up the space, they started to sort of like, they saw that we had the space, and also things were coming in. Like, we didn't have shelves, but people started to give us donation of materials. Like, whether they were books, whether they were basically artifacts, like graphic design artifacts during the historical period. Things started to come in, and then things people were like, hey, you guys should apply. So we're like, hey, actually, we applied so many times. And then they were like, so they, and also under the Negaraku campaign, which is also, thank you, Najib, they actually asked us, they commissioned us to do an exhibition at Balai on the graphic design history in Malaysia. So we were slightly afraid because we thought that we were going to be censored. But thankfully, they didn't say anything. We put up everything that we wanted to and was able to, and we got some money to sustain ourselves. So yeah, I guess we received a lot of support from very, very different communities. So I think we're very, very grateful for that.
Thank you, thank you. And Jacqueline, when you talk about Tanuti, I understand that Tanuti is built on, it's very much a commercial entity as well. It's promoting and selling handicrafts. But when you first started, or even today, when you're pushing this forward, how do you gain these resources? Are there resources available to you in East Malaysia?
Money, you mean?
Well, it can be money, could be space, could be a lot of things are considered resources.
When we first started, actually, I was still having a full-time job, so a lot of my salary for the month went to pay the salary of the artisans for the month. So that was how it worked for about 2 or 3 years. But now it's self-sustaining. We didn't really spend a lot of time trying to get funding because so far we didn't know very many people, but we did win a Magic Amplifier award. So also thank you very much.
There seems to be a very common narrative here. I'm aware.
But now it sustains itself. It's got enough momentum to carry on the business and perhaps grow the business. And hopefully it does. Hopefully the company does. But I would like to say one thing, and I noticed this actually on the plane. A year ago or 2 years ago, we proposed a design of Kuda Kepang for a client, and we were told that this is banned. Kuda Kepang is banned. I'm like, oh, why? And then today, in the Going Places magazine, in the aeroplane, we saw an article of Kuda Kepang celebrating it. So I think, I don't know whether it was censored before and now not, or what's the story, but there's a 2 or 3 page article on Kuda Kepang. Right. So maybe our government is becoming more and more mild, I guess. No?
It is very possible that because there's a shift going on right now, that all the guards are down and everything goes for just a little while more until they understand what they're doing. Like we have a tourism, arts and culture minister, and his name is Sabah MP Muhammadin Katapi, and we do, like you said, it's a name, we don't know his face, and there's lots no. But as people who have received resources from the former government or also from private entities, how would you, what do you envision his role to be? Do you think that he should be leading us or he should be listening to us? What do you envision the role of our minister to be?
Did you mention something of censorship this time? Yes, did you? Well, this is a very pet subject of the arts in the country, performing and otherwise. Even visual arts have to go through this kind of thing. But I believe that the government is not the only devil behind the censorship laws in the country. It is also us, the individual, our community. Our community tends to become very, very critical of things that we do that they may see or hear, that they may like or dislike, and then that becomes a problem for. So let's stop blaming the government for doing this to us. It is our own doing, not us, meaning our neighbors, our family, our relatives. They cannot come to terms with the broadening of the mind about the culture aspects of the country and the Sunni aspects of the country and the broad-mindedness of the country. We cannot yet come to terms with it. We are still kind of backward. And when we hear somebody say, hey, you cannot say tits, you know, why can't I say tits? I mean, we all have it. So I said, okay, we cannot say tits, let's say Chinese, nene. Which is probably sweeter, you know. But this honestly is something I'm not making up. It is our face-to-face responses that we get for some of our creative work. They cannot see women on stage, overly sexy, whatever. It's frightening, and we're talking about having a much more educated race of people. It's probably going to take a long time.
I'm really glad that you raised that, because you know, like, I'm of the opinion that Malaysia Baru is still a long way to go because our audience has not changed. So when you look at your respective audiences and who are very excited with new hopes, let's put the government side for 1 minute. How do you, in your respective fields, educate your audience to receive the art that you want to make?
For us, if it is just the members of the audience, we are not so afraid at all, because members of the audience are much more accepting. The people who are probably less accepting are the corporates. They buy a night, they come and watch a show. They are a little frightened as to what their invited guests are going to say about the quality or the language of that show. So we want the corporates to come and watch our shows because they have the money. But if bringing them to our theatres is going to cause unnecessary issues to be raised, then we'd rather say, just give us the money, like, you don't come. Something like that, yeah? Yes, sometimes it happens. But what I'm saying here is not like a massive problem that we face. It's not a massive problem. But one tiny little problem is bad enough for us to be able to, for us to have to sit up and take notice and see whether or not it's going to get any better. Yeah.
Right. So when we talk about the censorship of stories, or the censorship of or things we cannot say, or certain ways we shape the narrative to be more palatable for the audience, when you look at your work, especially with women, Azrina, do you face any of these problems? Could you give us some examples?
Stories of women. It's actually just trying to find stories of women, women designers especially, or even sort of like looking at art history, right? Like there is a lot of documented stories around mostly male artists, women artists, even like Sarah Winter. It's like it's hard to find women's stories because it's just not documented, and you don't know why, because there are women doing a lot of things in Malaysian history. Memang macam-macam lah, but they're just not documented. Very invisible. So you sometimes trying to find out why these stories are invisible. It's also like yeah, why? Don't know. Because the women are there, the women are doing things. When you read old newspapers or doing research, there are women there, but just trying to find who's that. What did the women do? Where is the artwork? What happened to it? You know, just things like that. It's very hard, and trying to find out why it's also don't really know. But not just that, no, it's also histories around marginalized community, like the LGBT community, for example. It's hard to find like, so what happened, where are all the lesbians in the 50s, for example? I'm sure they're there, but where are they? How come they're not documented? Like even men, different kind of sexual intimacies, just these histories are just not there. Also, actually, even not just these two, but even like my experience in archiving graphic design work, trying to look at design work that was in Tamil, for example, the Tamil language. It's memang susah nak cari. Like I even in the archive, like it's hard. So it's just I think what we choose to document is that awareness memang tak ada lah, not just document but writing of history, like our own history. I think that is also something that we need to that literacy we need to sort of instill in each of us as an artist. You know, because if we don't document our work, right, no one will.
Yes, yes, I loved what you said about the invisible voices. Do you have anything to add, Michelle, to this?
I think I don't. Me personally, my work don't deal with censorship. But I remember there's one play that I tried to compete with this festival theatre or something like that. So my play talk about terrorists trapped in the bunk. They try to escape, and then they say, "Actually, could you change this line a little bit, change the name here and there?" And then I said, "Why is it maybe sensitive for some people?" And then I changed because I need money to. Because if I want, I got a lot of money lah. But tetap kalah juga. So I made a wrong decision. And then after that, I don't deal with any censorship. But I think there's one because I teach at Aswara. So we have this script from Malay script from Singapore, right? So they use this word "cookie" as aku tendang cookie tau. I keep your ass, right? So cookie, it's not just female parts. It's also like bontot can boleh translate jadi bontot juga. So, but some lecturers, senior lecturers feels uncomfortable with that word, so they ask me, which I supervise the student, to change that word. So, but we don't debate about it. We don't talk about it. Why we must? Why we ask our student to change that word? But this is the culture of fear in Aswara, and I hope that can be changed soon. That if not tukar, then boleh, but we must debate about it, or we must talk about it. Why we not tukar, or why don't? It's I think in that case, I should talk to the student. So what do you think? And let the student decide whether they want to tukar or not. That's that kind of.
Right. I think ultimately what I'm gathering from what you're saying is that it comes down to repackaging what we want to put out. Even if it's our history, when you're writing it, there's certain parts of the history that people don't want to consume or they want to pretend it never existed. I'm particularly facing this problem in the literary arts, and we've been doing poetry shows because there are certain voices that are not heard. But one person will go to Sarawak, meet some Penang people, and come and tell me a story. So I want to bring this back to you, Jacqueline. Do you feel like the Penang community have a voice or their art is getting sold around the world because of this sexy packaging? What's sexy about? I saw when I was looking at Tanuti and I was like, this is so beautiful, right? But like they don't see the strive, they don't see all of that, and it's reimagined or repackaged and then put on a runway. Do you feel like these are the things that are happening that is required to happen in order for those voices to be heard?
I feel that I don't know what I feel. So basically, when I interact with the banana community, I feel that they have been marginalized and compromised for decades. First the timber companies came and took their land, so they didn't have very much land to roam. Then the palm oil companies took their land, they had less land to roam. So, and then most recently, the government flooded their land for the hydroelectric dam. So they've been like seriously bad luck, and they never evolved and developed themselves as a community. First of all, because they're nomadic and they didn't settle into groups and they didn't work towards culture or costume or architecture. So they didn't have any of those. The only thing that they had was craft. And okay, so in the first instance, you know that they are poor. They do not have economic power. And then secondly, they are obviously being educated to protest the government. So they're very angry and poor. And this is the combination that puts them in a worse light, with the government, I think. I come in and I don't have a political view, and I try to help them monetize what is most valuable to them, which is their skill in craft making. And it's nothing romantic or amazing. The fact is, if you want them to have certain economic power while in situ, as in they do not need to suffer from urban migration, while they are in situ, how do they make money? Craft is the only way to. If it's crops, it will be a really tough time to transport the crops. Craft, for every fiber of craft, they can get limitless value. Like whatever value you can put on is available to them. So we have to market well, we have to design well, and hopefully they'll be able to generate income where they are. Nothing romantic about that. Just, in this day and age, it hurts me that the entire Malaysia is developed. We have twin towers, and then we have a bunch of people who don't have access to road, electricity, mobile signal. To take a motorbike to the clinic if you're pregnant is 150 ringgit. It's crazy. I mean, you go to hospital, you pay parking already, you're screaming, right? These people have it so bad. So why don't we help them? And we help them in whatever way we can, we need to gloss it out, we need to brand it, we do it so that they can maximize their work, the value of their work. That's all.
So my question would be, do you think that they are able to sell these crafts on their own?
I definitely want them to sell on their own. Please give them mobile signal, at least. Right. It's crazy. Every time I go in, it's
yes, of course. Yeah. I sorry to say that I do not know terribly much about indigenous arts and craft and their work, but from what we can see from other countries, like for instance Australia, where they were left behind for such a long time, and now the country is trying to make good of what has been left behind, and suddenly there's indigenous art form everywhere, and everything you do, they present this like in your face. Like, we don't want to be caught in that kind of a situation. We want to be happy to know that our indigenous population is there, being looked after, can fend for themselves. And when we were hearing the debate just now, whether it is true or not true, whether you believe in it or not, doesn't matter. But when we were hearing the debate just now about commercialization of the indigenous art form, I want to bring you to the fact that when TV Malaysia started, guys, that was a long time ago, before all of you were born. This was in 1963, TV Malaysia was started. What we did as a country was, we took this art form and just bastardized it. It just does not ring true anymore. It does not look the same anymore. The Makyongs and the Bangsawans and the Jogets and the Aslis do not look like what it's supposed to look once upon a time. And now what you're getting on television is this, and you're pleased with it. Nobody is fighting for it. Nobody is saying, hey, this is not us, you know. This is something you all have concocted and then present it back to the community, to the country. This is not what we want. Mak Yong was never like that. I mean, if you remember the late Khatijah Awang, she did not dance her Mak Yong like that. Like now, it's all covered up. Why? Because Malu and Segan cannot be seen to be doing it in the way that it should be done. So if you watch Cantonese opera or Chinese opera, it has not been bastardized. It looks very, very similar to what it was many, many hundreds of years ago. But when it comes to, and also Indian culture has not been bastardized, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe you should talk to Temple of Fine Arts and they'll be able to tell you. But when it comes to Malay culture, it's just gone lost in translation, probably. Yeah, evolve is the word. Development is the word. But honestly, guys, we need to sit up and take notice and put up a fight. We cannot be being dished out everything that and accept it without any question. I mean, places like Aswara, if I may say, because Aswara is a close friend of the performing arts scene, where they do research and where they have to teach and then where they have to develop. They have to pay a lot more attention to these things that is traditional art form and make sure that it comes back to us in the same way that it was previously. So this is talking about the indigenous art form. We don't want to lose it. We don't want to modernize it. We don't want to commercialize it. We want it to be a pride of the people so that we ourselves can share in that pride. You know? I don't know whether you understand what I'm saying, but I'm trying to make myself understood. Maybe I'm a bit older than you, so it's a bit hard to understand what I'm trying to say. But the art form is being taken away from us as we speak, and this should not happen.
Thank you, Dato. I just want to go back a little bit. You were pointing out just now that when I asked you, do you think that the Penans can speak for themselves? And you said yes, and you were very sure, and you said give them internet. Now, could you just outline again that mobile?
There's no telephone reception,
right,
at all. So if they have access to society, the rest of society, then they will be able to interact more.
Right. So because I find it very interesting that you're pointing this out, because a lot of times when we think about these communities, these marginalized communities, the first question that we think of a barrier is, oh, they can't speak our language. Then there's a language barrier between us. Do you think that is a problem between the communities and?
No, is that a problem? I think people can learn languages, and if they have access to internet, they'll probably learn it faster. Probably. But yeah, how hard is it to learn languages? Especially, in our region, everything is phonetic.
Right.
Yeah. So it doesn't take me that long to speak banana. I'm sure it can't take them that long to speak English.
And has there ever been a thought about us learning another language?
Yeah, no. Very rudimentary. I think their vocabulary is like 1,000 words. How hard is it?
Would this be a language that all of you would want to learn?
Of course.
To add to your repertoire? Yes. Yes. I think that's very interesting.
How hard is it? Is it a barrier? I don't know.
It's just that when we talk about marketing and promotion, a lot of times the middleman that comes in between it and says, "Oh, it's okay, we'll boss up," like you said, boss up will sell it and we'll explain to you the culture and everything. But when we talk about directly from the source, if the source tells us their stories, would there be a language barrier? You're saying there isn't, but there is an infrastructure barrier.
There is infrastructure barrier, and that is the biggest barrier. Yeah.
Do you see this infrastructure barrier within our cities today? I guess what I'm trying to focus back is, when we talk about the amount of art spaces that are coming up in the city and that are also shutting down, the amount of theatre companies, performance venues that are coming up and also shutting down, or museums that are not coming up with audiences, not having a good audience. Do you see this problem being solved anytime soon?
I don't think it's yet diselesaikan dengan baik. Recently, my friend to shut down the space, small space, markas because tak orang guna. And then but there's a lot of artists out there want to use, but they don't have money. Why they don't have money? Because there's no funding, there's no grant, there's no initiative, so that artists can apply and get a grant and then save the die and then pay rent for studio or something like that. So there's no funding. So the government need to spend more money on funding. Before I came to this forum, I did some research. In 90s. There's a lot of faculty ditubuhkan di seluruh universiti di Malaysia yang fokus kepada bidang komputer in 1990s. See what happened now. We have in IR 4.0 something, and they talk about it every day, every month, every week. They talk about it. At the same years, 1990s, Aswara, UITM, USN, OC, and the rest of the country, they set up art faculty in each university. And what happened to our industry? There's no industry in art, in theater. I don't know in other arts like craft or everything. But there's no industry in our performing arts. There's no performing art industry. They set up the university in 90s, but no industry. So where people like me and my friend nak kerja, so we keluar graduate and then I am lucky because I studied so hard and then I got scholarship and then they sent me to study and then I came back and teach. But what about other people that they don't want to teach, they want to act on stage? They don't have industry. Maybe they have only DPEC and some small spaces. Istana Budaya, sorry to say, they need to shut down because we don't provide. Or give it to us.
Why?
Or give it to us. There's a lot of students or graduates can manage that thing. They have like 1,000. Have you been to Istana Budaya? They have 1,400 seats. How come you want to feel? If you have 10 shows, so you need to feel like what 14,000 audience per show. I mean, the title lah. I
Sorry, I just want to quickly bring it back to Azrina. Azrina, when we talk about empowering communities, especially when it comes to women and their narratives, we talked about infrastructure is that's necessary thing that we need. We also talked about how we need to have more access to funding in order to get the infrastructure that we want. But in your field, moving from online to offline, what do you think the investment needs to be directed towards?
For me, education, because like you said, the last education plan, I think one of the top things that they wanted to hit was coding. It was also technology. So they started to teach coding is a compulsory subject to teach in schools. But art history, like just recognizing art as the soul of the nation, as recognizing that art is also a language, a voice that we speak. Some people cannot speak in maths or accounting or law. We speak in fine art, in designing, in dance, in theater, So I think just recognizing that art actually plays a huge role in shaping our identity, our understanding of each other, and also to sort of like educate about visual literacy. And there's this professor last year from Taiwan who came to Malaysia and gave a talk, and she actually said this. She said that academia or education activates or help to activate and facilitate this thing called what is the word that she used? Intellectual emancipation. But for me, having like a minister that knows the role of art actually activate a cultural emancipation. Knowing that culture is such a huge part of who we are and how we speak to each other. I think we don't have that lah, and this is why saya Ahmad Jamal punya sculpture kena tumbangkan last year, 2 years ago.
So what you're saying is, when you talk about education, who do we need to educate? Do we need to educate our ministers or our audiences?
Everyone. We need to communicate our community. Either it's the government, each other, like Dr. Prana said, right? Like it's like the government is not the only evil here, it's all of us. We also self-censor ourselves. I self-censor myself all the time. We are so used to it. We are so used to this culture of fear, self-censorship. Takut that we're not going to get supported by our own community. I think if we educate from young that all of this is important in trying to sort of articulate who we are, understanding who we are, and it's also that art is not like kat bawah sekali lah, because especially in design, like our value is so little. It's like in the hierarchy of the arts.
Right. So when we talk about educating our audiences, for example, it comes back to good marketing, good communication of our communities. Could you give us some examples, and this is for everyone, of how you have effectively or ineffectively communicated your communities to these larger audiences?
Well, the arts, we all understand, has no money. And therefore, because we have no money, we cannot pay to market our works. We have got to do it in a manner which is like word of mouth, like Facebook, like YouTube, and it's very soft selling. It doesn't really reach as far as we would like it to. We need money in order to do that. But can I just touch a little bit about the education aspect, because we touched on education. Education is a very big responsibility towards what we are talking about this afternoon. And whose responsibility it is First of all, it is the responsibility, of course, of the government, who has to realize that they have taken away the arts from the school curriculum. Therefore, they have got to come to terms with the fact that it must be brought back, right from primary school to secondary and to the university. You cannot start with just the university level. It's too late. And that's the problem that we are facing now, because suddenly we go to all the universities that Pashali mentioned, who have faculty of arts, but what did we know about it? Zilch, nothing, because we were never taught from primary school. And this actually was our country's vision of wanting to have science and technology, which is fine, because we are a developing country. We need to have a mission and a vision, but that's now done. So please, we want to tell them, bring back the arts to our education, for our children. We must, because otherwise we'll become a race of people who are not cultured, and that's not what we want.
Understood. When we talk about educating the new audiences and to accept and to consume the culture of the Penang community, of the East Malaysian stories that are not being heard, where do you think the investment needs to go towards? Is it a lot more on educating the Penang community on how to market, or on educating all of the other communities on opening their ears and listening a little bit more?
I think there has to be more suppliers like myself, more entities like Tanoti, who collectively educate the audiences on what we do in the Penang. And I think there are quite a few people who sell the plastic PVC woven bags and clutches or whatever, and those are all made by Penang. So those the messages have come through, but we are not here to educate people about the plight of the communities which our artisans belong. I think it is wrong to continue to tell people of their plight. What we want to do is shape these communities into centers of excellence in basketry craft. We want to be able to tell the world that if you want somebody to weave rattan, please come to Malaysia. That's what we want to tell people. Yeah. I mean, if you are an artisan, you don't want people to know that you are poor, kid had a hole in the heart and died, or you don't want people to know that. But you want to own your craft, and you want to feel proud that as a Penang, you're contributing to international trade, contributing to GDP, and making your craft and your culture prominent.
So the message is not necessarily, should never be focused on sympathy. It should be very much geared towards the craft is good and of high quality.
Yeah, because it is. Yeah, and whilst they are still poor, obviously there are groups still telling people that they're poor, which is not wrong. Which is not wrong, but they need to be they need to have a new narrative. They need the world to see them with sparkling eyes rather than pity. Yeah. It should not be continuously charity cases. They should be made wealthy. Yeah.
Charlie, do you have anything to add to this?
I think about how we promote ourselves. I think recently, if you want to promote on Facebook or YouTube, you need to pay. Not in five or 6 years ago, where I can invite 1,000 friends. Now they have limit 500 or 200 only. So now if you want to invite more, and then we need to boost our event or our whatever, and then we need to pay like Fred said, and it need money, and it's not free anymore. Internet is not free anymore. only government, not only bagi duit kepada production to put up a play or to put up like any exhibition ke whatsoever persembahan, but they need to put some money on visibility as well. What I mean visibility is the promotion, promotion publicity, and also archiving, because people need to know what was happened in 1980, whatever year. So, and then they have the figure, oh, this is how much we spend our money, and then these people do so much thing. I do my own initiative. I collect all title, all theater title that have been staged this year from January until now. You know how much title that we have from student production, amateur, professional. Right now until show, well, until August, we have 110 titles so far. That's so much. And I can ask this production, each production, how much money they get from the government. I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 or 3, less than 10% from this list. So I think government should invest not on production, on company, but also on the visibility, so that not only for local audience, for the public, local public, but also to the international level. Hey, KLPAC exists. Why don't we invite KLPAC? Go to tour, bring Datuk Seri, go to make whatever. So this is our Malaysian Hamlet. This is how we do it, you know. And I watch Thunderstorm. Why don't we send our Thunderstorm, Malaysian version of Thunderstorm, to China back and see what and how this China drama has been staged in Malaysia and been adapted to Malaysia, and then this is what we got, you know. So visibility not only for local audience, for the local community, but a bigger community of Malaysia, Sabah, Sarawak, and Southeast Asia and national level.
Right. Yeah. And Azrina, when we talk about visibility online and offline, how have you been striving to achieve visibility for the communities that you want to speak to?
It's very hard now. I think you need to be good in social media. I don't think we're very good in social media. But really, social media. And also talking to different schools and communities, talking about your work, talking about why this is important, why having an archive is important, why visual literacy is important. And I also teach sometimes, so teaching students about art history, why all of this is important. So I think, unfortunately, social media, you know, and social media is also a space where not everyone has access to, you know. So you don't reach some communities, and also we are also living in a very urban English community, kan? So I think also not very well versed in Malay, Chinese, like all of that point, like, you know, you can't, it's hard, it's really hard. And we actually don't spend much on visibility at all. We just sort of do. I think all of us do that. We just do our work and like bangun, buat kerja, and this is what we need to do. We do it. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to tag on to that, like, so I promote a poetry event every month. That's my job. For the last 3 years, we had 51 shows. And the problem is, every time we'll have, let's say we have, so this month we have Saleh bin Jonet, who is going to perform after many, many years of not performing. And we're very excited to have him. And we'll see 200 people have said they are interested in attending. And we'll have another 76 people who said confirm going for this show. And then we think, oh, sure, my gauge is normally 50% of that audience. So you see the number of 50%, that's the one that is actually going to attend. And of course, you know, as a marketer for, as a curator for this is Georgetown Literary Festival, a lot of the push that I've been getting from the team is like, how to go viral. Can someone do a poem? Can do a poem in like 3 minutes and then record and then it go viral and everyone wants to come for the show. And I really don't think that's how it works. I don't think you can engineer these things. But of course, when it comes back to visibility, we would like to achieve that. So with that said, I would love to open the session to the floor. Does anyone have any questions? We're going to bring a mic around. Does anyone have any questions? Please raise your hand.
Okay, this is directed to Dato' Freda. There were worries end of last year about KL Pack, about sustainability, money problems. So a lot of people who like are consumers of the local theatre are very worried for KL Pack, and we're wondering what we can do. Is there any update about what's happening now and what the public or even people in the community can do to support KL Pack besides going to the show?
Actually, the story came out in 2012 first, when it was a true picture that was painted for KLPAC, because it is not cheap to run a place like that. It's big, it's got a lot of staff, and we need a lot of money to make it happen. So in 2012, we had a proper piece of communication. And this is very important. It is correct communication. So we had a press conference. And this press conference reached the ears of some very important organizations. One of them was Sain Dabi, Yayasan Sain Dabi. That was the story of 2012. So Yayasan Sain Dabi came forward and assisted us with funding that was very much needed. Not funding for us to do our shows, but funding to help sustain the place. It lasted for 3 years at $1 million a year. Now that's very good money. The place needs about 4 million a year to run. So 1 million was from Yayasan Sandrabi and a bit more from other sponsors. It helped, but it was not enough. So when it came to last year, another piece of communication went out when we spoke to some newspapers to say, we are still in that kind of a predicament. If nothing changes, was the words that was used by our officers. If nothing changes, we may have to close down. So what do newspapers do? They will, of course, make it big to say KLPAC is going to close down. So yes, the word did go out to say that KLPAC is going to close down. Now, the truth of the matter is, it can close down if it does not get the support that we need. So it's not to frighten anybody. The first company that will be quite upset with us is, of course, YTL, because they are our supporters for KLPAC. The update of that is we are still struggling, but like what you have heard this afternoon, we don't want to be painting just a dismal story all the time. We want to be struggling, but smilingly so. And also, we will not go down without a fight.
Yeah. Do we have another question? Do we have another question? Yes, Prashant.
I want to add something. What we need to do is we as a rakyat of Malaysia should pay attention to what government decide and something the policy changes or anything. Recently, I think you know about the new tariff for electricity. They want to naikkan harga for electricity. Nanti KLPAC also will terkena because you so much aircon and lights and
They receive the tariff.
Yeah. So this is so this is why we need support from the government, because they get money from us, and then what we got There's nothing that we got.
I just want to tag on to that. If we put the government aside, do we in this country, in this day and age, do we have patrons of the arts? Could you tell us more about the patrons that
we have had? If you have been to KLPAC and look on our walls, you will be able to see quite a few names of patrons of the arts. And these patrons of the arts are very well-meaning, ordinary folk who believe in the arts and who want to make the arts happen. And they give us some money, of course, not as much as what Yayasan Sandabi has given us, but it doesn't matter. Whatever money that people want to donate for the arts to live on, we will accept. And this doesn't happen just in Malaysia. All over the world, if you go to Australia, to the theatres there, you will see boards and boards of names of people who give money towards the arts, who contribute. But Malaysia does not have a culture tradition. Our population is not very into the arts. When you go out with your boyfriend and then he says to you, what should we do this weekend? Huh? Let's go and walk around Pavilion. That is what I mean by saying we do not have a very cultured race of people. If you and your boyfriend say, hey, let's go and find out what's playing at DPAC. Let's go and find out what's playing at PJ Live Arts. Let's go and find out what's Matic showing. Then we may have arrived, but we haven't yet.
So the reason why I asked about patron of the arts is that if you look online now, there are online Patreon services. Patreon, have you all heard of Patreon? So Patreon is an online platform. Basically, you put up your project, you put up your organization and the efforts that you do, and around the world, people can give you money for it, and they can support you from anything between $1 US dollar to 50 or 100 US dollars. And then sometimes you would give them a gift, a token, or something like that. So when we talk about resources like this, for example, for crafts, for example, if you put this online, do you think that you will be able to reach out to more patrons? Do you think that this is something that is possible, or do you think that the market is still very much in Malaysia?
I really don't have a patron, so I cannot tell you that. But now that you said it, I'm going to research it. Yeah, it's Patreon.
Patreon. Have you tried it as well? No. Have you? No. No one's tried it.
Never, but I from what I heard now is the era of crowdsourcing. Get money from.
Yes.
Even Tabung Harapan is a crowdsourcing.
Yes, exactly. Our entire government is crowdsourcing.
Yeah. And I think Tabung Harapan is actually the proof that actually kita memang suka menerima, but we are not menerima to the art. We will not support art. But it's proof that we can pay, we can give money to Tabung, but yeah, for what? I don't know.
There's another one that there's another way of where the population can contribute, and even in Sabah and Sarawak as well, and that is known as crowdfunding. This is again nothing new. Crowdfunding has been happening in many countries of the world, and that is you put up your production and you say this production needs 15,000 ringgit, and so the population will contribute however much they want or however little they want, so that we arrive at that 15,000 that we want in order to make that production happen. Crowdfunding gives you the feeling that the population is behind you and they are supporting you, which is fantastic. You can do that.
Yes. As Rita, do you think that you would be reaching out to patrons, and who do you think your patrons might be?
Actually, we do have. Because when we first started, we didn't have money, so wrote to all our friends lah. Like so we have like macam membership tier where you have a yearly membership, which is like 100, starts from 100 ringgit to like however much. So we have people like, Marina Mahathir and like Valentine really, your kawan, your network, please we need money to, pay electricity and whatnot. So we do have people donating money, and mostly actually academics, scholars, historians, and because we have an online archive which we make it available for everyone. So we also have sometimes museums, and they will write in. They were like, "Hey, we want to use this for our exhibition now." And sometimes that particular object or design work belongs to, for example, like him. So like we'll be like, "Can you donate money to MPA?" And then the owner will get some money from the donation as well, so that people know that actually this work are being appreciated, and also knowledge are being shared. So like that.
Yeah, because the reason why I brought this up was last year at Art for Grabs, we had a comic artist who took part, and he did not sell any of his prints. He had a lot of prints, and he did not sell any of them. What he did was he was live drawing, and he said to everybody, please go to my page and say you want to give me $1 every month, and I will give you something for free as a gift. And nobody understood. Everybody was like, why do you need my credit card details? Why should I constantly pay you? Because people see arts as a transaction, it's a one-off transaction. I'm going to attend this show now, and I will buy a ticket, and that's it. And nobody thinks about sustainability of it. So how do you communicate, look, my tariffs are increasing, I need to pay this owner, I need to pay that, I need to pay my artists. How do you communicate that message without sounding too dismal, but basically explain to them, look, this is what we need, and it's not just about buying one ticket. Right?
We need to, it's hard work. It's hard work on the publicity side of the company, the marketing side of the company. It is constant reminding, and it's true. No one is going to keep on, although we do have some patrons who do give regularly to the company, and that's wonderful. I mean, but it doesn't happen without hard work from us, from the group. You must reach out to them constantly. But that's okay for the beginning. Maybe, God willing, it will become a way of life for us. Yeah.
I don't know, for small company, I just set up my company early this year. We don't have that plan yet, but it's hard for me to do all the things. This is the era of independent. You the artist, you the one who sell it, you the one who do the marketing, and you the one who build the set and everything. So it's really hard for us for a small company, but I think it's good for us, and I think for young artists to learn different sector, different bidang dalam art, and then maybe when you like macam Faridah nanti, yeah, okay, this thing need this much money, and you need to focus on this and that. But I think in my age, I need to learn all of that, and I pun senang belajar perkara itu. Then, but I think as a company grow bigger and bigger, I need to to trust somebody. Hey, you do this thing and you do your job, and I pay you money. But at this moment, I think I need to do all the things.
Yeah. One-man machine, right? I believe we have a question from the floor. Yes.
So I have 3 questions. I hope that's okay. The first question is directed to Azrina. I just wanted to ask about what was the vision as well as the reason behind starting something like Sejarah Wanita, and was it motivated by starting Eurasia, the presence of women historically in Malaysian culture? And we'd just like to ask you to talk more about that, because I think that's a really interesting perspective to look at Malaysian culture. The second thing is that, especially, think the vast majority of consumers of media outside of the English-speaking Klang Valley circuit would be largely Malay-speaking people, and I would just like to hear your perspective about Malay consumers of Malay art, and what does the market look like, and outside of the Klang Valley, what does that market look like, and what does that culture look like? The next question is just kind of directed, generally speaking, to all panelists, which is maybe the discussion can move towards leveraging of celebrity culture. I don't know if this is something valuable, maybe something that everyone has thought about and rejected, I don't know. But it seems to me like in America, for example, and clearly it's not the same because it's much more of a culture of celebrityhood in America than there is in Malaysia. But for example, in Broadway, the interchangeability between Hollywood actors and actresses into Broadway shows, which kind of pull together all their fandom, viewership, things like that. I was thinking, is that something that the theatre scene or other things in Malaysia, other cultural aspects in Malaysia have thought about in terms of trying to get the publicity that you guys have thought about?
Thank you very much. That's great. Would you like to go first, Ms. Reina?
Okay, sejarah wanita, I'm actually taking a break from sejarah wanita at the moment because when we started the MDA, I just couldn't cope. But I will tell you how the project started. Basically, I think it started in 2014 or 13, I don't really. But what was happening at the time was because I was archiving visual culture, and then a couple of my other teammates, for Dr. Rusastina Idrus, she's doing gender studies in UM, and then there is Joanna, who's a feminist activist, and then also Smita, who at that time was working in an organization called Awam. So each of us are very different, but we all have our shared interest was we all were doing work around women's rights. So I was doing a lot of designing for the different women's rights organizations around the world. I think Joanna was also doing a lot of content and writing around women's issues, and then Dr. Lin obviously was heading gender studies, and then you have Smita that was doing work with our. So each of us, and also we all don't really know each other at that time, but we sort of like crossed path lah, and then and I really wanted to but all of us in our own sort of like work wanted to document women's history because we didn't know who are our women that was sort of like macam feminist that was missing in our historical narrative. There is also no women's museum, no any space that sort of like was documenting that. And of course, I think UMNO did have some writing about women's history, but of course it's like UMNO punya wanita-wanita lah. So we wanted to bring in like a kind of different perspective. Macam Kak Siddiq, Samsia Fakir, and women that was, you don't know who they are, but it has shaped our sort of like narrative. So we got together, and I guess fate sort of like brought us together, and we started it. It was not easy because of course we all also another project yang tak ada funding langsung. Everyone is just like your own time we set it up, and that was what we wanted. There was no vision for it. We only I think gave 2 talks about sejarah wanita, and yeah, that was why we wanted to do it. And what was the second question? What was the second question?
Second question was to Fashali about
market of Malay theatre, Malay art outside KL. I think there's some, based on the data that I collected for this year's punya theatre, most of the plays that been performed outside of KL and Selangor. The third state was Penang, and then there's another state like Sarawak, only one or two, Terengganu one, two, Pahang. So there's a market, but there's only limited to university based on my data. And I think I agree with my data because back in 70s when our theater, the golden era of theater, we all started at university, right? Panggung UN, experimental, Panggung experimental, University Malaya. So I think university play a big role. Institution, arts, higher education, university lah play important role to surmise this budaya menonton theater. And I hope we have like almost in every state in Malaysia have this have university and they have pusat kebudayaan. Pusat kebudayaan university must play a big role to build encourage students to watch theater and to consume art. To that's kalau tak ada dekat sekolah, maybe dekat university. For now, that's the very important place to encourage students. Soon they will graduate and have money to buy tickets to watch show and money to buy craft and painting or whatsoever. And for now, I think if you ask me if I want to go back to Johor and do theatre there, I don't want because there's no infrastructure and also audience. I'm afraid there's no audience there.
We have this carnival that happens in November. It's relatively new, but it does somewhat exist.
But I cannot only do theatre once a year.
Yes.
Then for the festival, and then what I'm gonna eat for the rest of the year.
Yes.
You know, so we need to, if we want to do make theatre, the idea of sustainability lah. I want to go back and then okay, I must make sure that I can eat and buat theatre. But for now, I think Kuala Lumpur, Lembah Kelang area is the center lah. It's the hub, arts hub, and Penang also it's growing. And I think Sarawak also is a big market as well there. I don't know, tapi I believe there's very much potential. You know, Sabah is the second largest tourism income after Penang. Penang is one and Sabah is number two. So there's a lot of potential. We don't know.
And the third question was on celebrities and the influence of celebrities. Would you use a celebrity to promote the arts? Yeah.
In mind,
do you have a celebrity in mind? Because I'm thinking of a celebrity right now, not an Instagram influencer, but a celebrity. So.
Before I did my postgrad studies, I did some maybe with celebrity in it. Not celebrity like very popular 1 million followers. Maybe like Anas Rizwan, you don't know kan?
So it's celebrities to us, but not celebrities to a wider audience. Okay.
Like my follower, let's say macam baru 1,000 and then he's got like 8,000 followers. So dia celebrity lah among us. So we consider it celebrity because our show is very small show. We did at Store Theatre DVP 80 audience per show, and we only have like 5 shows, so 400. So 8,000 followers compared to 400 audience, so still small. But we think celebrity play memberi impact to our show. But then the quality, not say Anas Rizwan is bad artist, but the other, if I don't want to say his name, the quality of his acting is not really, because dia tak ada theatre training. So I think that we should talk more about that.
Celebrities and the performing arts is actually not a very good marriage but if done properly, and we have Reza Minhad as the hero of the piece, and his wife was played by this lovely lady called Nadia, and they are both personalities to the Malay-speaking audience. And for the very first time in the 13 years that we have set up KLPAC, we had tickets sold out about 3 or so weeks before opening night. Now, that is the kind of impact that we want if we use personalities. And we must get to the personalities who can act. Reza Minhad, of course, apart from the fact that he was so drop-dead gorgeous, he can also act very well. So that's the way to do it. You do not take them because they are personalities. You take them because they will be able to do the thing you want them to do for the play. Yeah, I think when you mentioned Broadway and so on, honestly, you can't compare us to West End and Australia and so on, because we are still very small and we are just cultivating our art, our industry. So I wouldn't say no to personalities at all, provided they can do what they're supposed to do for the production.
Jacqueline, do you feel that celebrities would come in very handy for you?
Yeah, we have tried this formula where we get celebrities to support our cause, and we have actually done so. In my brochure, we have Tan Sri Michelle Yeoh wearing our shawl. So yeah, I do that. We also had Miss Malaysia 2014, who wore a dress with our songket, and she went on to win Miss Talent, the only time a Miss Malaysia won any prize in a Miss World competition. So she wore our songket, and actually that was when we generally first started our business, in the early days of our business, and she was our first Instagram post. So yeah.
Azrina, are there any icons that you've used? You mentioned Marina Mahathir and Valentine Willie, but these are patrons, but do they also double up as icons?
No celebrities, no icons. I think our community and network is very geeky, and also can be a bit academic. So the celebrity, I think we can't write on the celebrity culture.
All right. I just have one final question before I hand it back to the MC. My question is for everyone here. What can the arts teach Malaysia about being a better country? What do you think the arts and culture in your respective fields can teach Malaysia about being a better country? Dr. Farida?
Malaysia is a wonderfully rich country. Wonderfully rich country in the arts. Sabah, Sarawak, Kelantan, Terengganu, Johor, Malacca, Penang, Perak. We have so much to offer, and we are not yet even at the tip of the iceberg. So if we kind of contemplate our belly button, our navels, and then start thinking about what we can do, what it is that we want to present, I am sure we can get the answer that you are looking for. That will make Malaysia a country that people will look at and say, this Malaysia Truly Asia business. Yeah. Now I don't know whether you believe this Malaysia Truly. It is true. Malaysia is really truly Asia, but let's show it in our deeds rather than just in our words. I think we have a fair chance of making Malaysia to be a wonderful country.
to speak on behalf of the arts, not just my field.
Yes, of course.
I think, regardless of what I am, I'm actually a capitalist. And if we can cultivate an entire sector that is thriving and generate an ecosystem around that sector, you will actually contribute to the GDP. And why not, you know? Like, the West End is 1 mile square and earns £40 billion a year from tourist receipts. Just tourists going to the box office to buy tickets. Why can't we generate that for Malaysia when it has so much to offer? We have so much to offer. Why can't we do that? I mean, instead of donating to Tabung whatever, why don't we generate money and an economy and people coming to watch us or purchase our art and our culture? And, you know, it's not merely about commercialization. It's about ownership of who we are. And if we can own who we are and make money for the country, why not? You know, it's fantastic. Yeah. Sorry, I feel very strongly about it. I have no art background or design background, but I have the ability to understand that the bar is so low. Whatever we do gives an incremental value to this industry, and why not?
Teach Malaysian.
I believe that I do theatre because I want to know people, to know me myself. Because jadi orang seni dia sangat halus kan? Because we are so tiny, so sangat halus. We can masuk dalam hati semua orang. Because can understand people. You know, we need to understand people. You know, in art, I think kalau I tak masuk art, I would be like racist, xenophobic people, you know. But because I study art and art, you know, I'm very proud to sit on this chair among this 1, 2, 3, 4 women as a panelist, as a moderator here. And so this is Malaysia that I want. Give them women more voice. And arts allow me to understand these issues, and then if I me personally can understand this, I believe the whole Malaysia can understand each other and can have a better Malaysia.
Thank you very much, Azrina. I think for me, because I study a lot of representation in my work and also with the archive, interrogate different power structures within design, within our visual culture, from, you know, your really bad design at the Mama to, you know, to like really slick design in pavilion. By studying this design, representation, power structure, I think we as creators will be able to create interventions. We will be able to change representation. Who speaks to you? We do not want only top to bottom. We want the bottom up. To, you know, we create dialogue with each other. I think we will become a much kinder society. Much kinder society. I think we are so not kind to each other. It's really bad, actually.
Right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please give a big round of applause. I'd like to thank you, MIDP, and I'd like to hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Melissa, for moderating. Thank you to Dr. Faida American, Azrina Marwan, Jacqueline Fong, and Fasha Ali Fazli. I thoroughly enjoyed the discussion. I'm sure the rest of the audience felt the same way. We truly appreciate you all coming here and sharing all that. Thank you so much once again. We'd like to also express our gratitude to KLPAC for endorsing this event. We say that we'll invite Dr. Faida to give her closing remarks.
We heard so much already. Are you sure you still want to hear anything more? Yeah. Oh no, then you must come buy a ticket and come and watch the show. Well, honestly, it is our pleasure to be here. It is certainly mine, and also to meet the four lovely people. One, of course, is a dude, but we're not fussy. Ladies and gentlemen, guys, and also you are the young population of Malaysia, and it is to you that we want to impress upon to come and be part of this wonderful new Malaysia that we have created together. And 80% of the population voted for this government to be in. So let's continue to make sure it works for us, for the arts, for education, for the sports, and for everything else. Now, talking about football, you probably did read this little article about the Japan football team who, after they lost their game, they went out like true gentlemen. They had a very polite, bowing Japanese system with everybody. Not only that, they cleaned up their changing room. They made us feel that, oh my God, I want to be a Japanese. Because we feel so proud of them. And this is what we must do for ourselves. I want to be a Malaysian because we are such a wonderful race of people. Thank you very much.
I think conversation is not over yet. We have a lot more to talk about right now with you in the future. On behalf of MIDP, we'll probably take this footage of this recording and we'll figure out something we can market and see if we can get more. Sorry?
Can we have a group picture?
Yes, we can, definitely. Can everyone just come to the stage and we have a good group picture? Let's do that.
Okay, ready? Right, come down.
Michelle, I'll call you.
There's a slight problem. We cannot go beyond the range of things.